it's Carl with a K. Let's talk about Hollywood. Welcome to the show. Hi everyone, this is Carl Gibson, and this is episode 42 of Let's Talk About Hollywood, an audio-only Hollywood memoir that deals with my career, personal life, takeaways, characters, history, and thank you for being here as always. Today is Sunday, May 31st, 2026, so I released episode 41 yesterday, and in the intro and outro, sending concerns, thoughts, vibes, support, and prayers to those of you in the United Kingdom, Western Europe, Kenya, as well as those here in the United States and many of the other 26 countries that are listening to this podcast and downloading. You know, we're dealing with weather events, health events, fuel shortages, war, instability, and so a big global hug virtually from me to you, and thank you for being here. What I'll do is I'll just jump right into this week's episode, and where I left off in episode 41 was that there had been my birthday housewarming party with my husband Bebbles, and then the Emmys within 3 days of each other. And the following Monday, after the Emmys, which were on a Sunday, Bebbles had a doctor's appointment, and that's where this picks up. And this episode is called That's Hollywood, I Didn't Make the Rules. Monday, September 23rd, 2002. I accepted the invite for the press screening of Sweet Home Alabama last week. I gave Bebbles first dibs, of course, but it conflicted with his schedule. So I invited Nigel, and we're going. This was before Stone's doctor's visit today, and Nigel was already on his way when I got the call from Stone that his doctor saw him and advised him to go to the emergency room and be admitted into the hospital. I asked Stone if it was better that I cancel, even though I'd still have missed visiting hours since we were both caught by surprise. Stone told me to go ahead, and so I will, but only because it will keep my mind from wandering to negative directions of worry. It'll probably all sink in when I get home, and the apartment is empty, and no Peaches. Peaches is one of my nicknames for Stone. I asked Stone to leave me his phone number when he's assigned a room, but I haven't heard from him since he went home before the hospital to get his things together. I'm nervous in a minor way. I want Stone to be comfortable, and I truly hope he is okay. They want Stone in for observation at the hospital. My calm is twofold, but only because, 1, Stone is not scared, and 2, there's nothing I really can do at this moment. The key is that I keep working. Stone can handle this while I handle the bills, the house, and work. I hate to compartmentalize like that, but this is something that I know we can handle together. All I can do for the next 24 hours is stay in touch and call him before I go to bed. If he's still in the hospital tomorrow by the time that I get off work, I will visit, of course. Stone knows that no one could be more devoted to him than me. He sounded fine the last time I talked to him. I'm just glad I talked him into making an appointment 6 days earlier than scheduled. He changed it without argument and agreed with my logic when I said, "You can't work if you're at risk of falling out somewhere." I said it just like that, with the right line reading, and it was agreed to. I didn't leave for home from the newsroom Emmy night until 12:45 in the morning and was in bed by 3:15. I made sure to sleep close next to Stone. I just had a feeling that he wouldn't be home today after going to the doctor. The doctors didn't lecture Stone about his weight. They felt that the swelling he has is from his kidneys. Tuesday, September 24th, 2002. I've talked to Stone a couple of times today. I had to call his supervisor at his job on his behalf. I'd met this supervisor at Stone's recent work party that I attended as his guest at Medieval Times in Orange County, so that worked out. I also gave Stone's room number and phone extension to his boss and two of his coworkers he adores. The hospital doesn't call out to the Valley's area code, so his coworkers called him and cheered him up. The doctor wants Stone in the hospital for 2 more days at least, and to then take a month off of work via disability. The doctor said he'd sign the papers for disability on the spot. He thinks that Stone commuting to work so soon after work will only run the risk of raising his blood pressure. After the doctor told him that, Stone said jokingly, but truthfully, "Well, what do you think my blood pressure is going to be when I have to actually get in the car and drive in traffic?" Stone told me that he doesn't think he'll take a month off work. "What would I do in the house for a month, day after day?" He sounded horrified. I'll ask him again tonight when some time has passed. They are banning Stone from salt, as well as other protein and fat restrictions. Right now, they're worried about his blood pressure and not any risk of organ failure, but they want to do those tests anyway on his vitals. The medical team was also horrified when he said that he'd used Primatene Mist during an asthma attack. They're prescribing him a real inhaler, if that should happen again. The adjustments are a lot of heart-smart foods that Bebbles likes anyway. He probably needs to take blood pressure meds indefinitely. Some are for life, some are just for now. This is the time out that Stone is forced to take to commit on this deeper level to all of the benefits of losing more weight. It sucks going home and he's not there. It feels like limbo, but hopefully he'll be out of the hospital by this Friday. Work is comforting in an odd way. I'm doing fine. I'll see Stone after work. Visiting hours end at 8:30, and I should be able to get a half hour with him. Wednesday, September 25th, 2002. I just had a music editor tell me that an R&B superstar spends $4,000 a month on her hair. She told her that herself. She could get it done at a private salon for $500 per look, is what I say, but it's her money. Stone called me, and he's been in touch with his job. They've been cool, and they'll mail his next paycheck. Stone was allowed to go outside this morning, and he really enjoyed that. His blood pressure is going down, but I personally don't think he will be out of the hospital until Saturday. They want to get his kidneys back to full strength and capacity, his doctor said. It's still a matter of his blood pressure lowering. They draw blood every few hours to check his vitals. The doctor allowed him to eat the healthy snack bar that I bought him last night when I visited. He said chocolate soy milk is fine as long as it's low salt. Here at work, in the newsroom, everyone's congratulating me on my promotion, and I appreciate it, but I'm not really able to make the connection of joy. Not because of the job, but just because my mind is juggling a lot of things, having to take care of Stone's affairs, my affairs, our business, and it's endless, it seems. I'm on autopilot. I'm not sad, just naturally concerned and concentrating on whatever task is at hand and the order in which it comes. If my mind were a computer, I'd have about 10 separate windows open. I took a hot shower this morning because I didn't know how I was going to wake up and face my itinerary, and the shower just set a calm tone for me. My sister sent me birthday bath and shower products that I'll break out tonight. I did 3 loads of laundry before I went to bed. I'm on deadline tonight, and so I'll miss visiting hours with Stone. He understands and has never complained about it, and I'm glad. I'm the only one working, and even when the editor did let me leave early, like last night, I could see that he was nervous. I talk to Stone 4 or 5 times a day, at least, and he's not far away. My hope is that while it sucks that I can't make visiting hours sometimes, that it will help him stay on track. My hours aren't going to change as long as I have this job, and Hollywood working hours aren't conducive to hospital schedules, as we are finding out. Stress is useless. It really is. I'm pretty calm for that very reason. It's about 6:40 p.m. and the Hollywood Hills, downtown, all of it, is becoming enfolded in fog. I can't even see the hills. It's that thick. Bebbles just called. He should be discharged tomorrow. If that ends up happening, I will be very glad. Very glad indeed. I'm so tired right now. Human Resources just called me and told me that my raise didn't go through in time and will be retroactive on my next paycheck 3 weeks from now. I wanted to scream, but I just said, "It figures. How did I know this would happen?" and stayed silent while they apologized and hung up. HR had days to do this, but now's the day that they make payroll errors. It's a minor inconvenience, and I'm not worried about it. I just hate the whole New York bureaucracy, where all of these monies delays always seem to happen. The New York executives, in my instance, are ones that I don't care for at all. They are cheap and they are slow. They just make me ill. Whatever. At home, our new apartment is so mellow and conducive to healing. All Stone has to do is come up with a new diet plan and adjust to his meds. He can't drink dark sodas. He loves fruits and vegetables, and we just got a bunch of Rubbermaid at our housewarming, so he can do this. We'll modify it if we have to. The key is diet, and Stone seems ready. I also told him he has to reduce his stress. Stone gets so into everything that he's feeling. Today, I heard him start to gasp at something in defense before I'd even said a word. I said, "Look, one of the first things you need to do is slow yourself down before I'm finished saying something. Stop anticipating what people are going to say before they say it." I should talk. I interrupt Stone all the time, but it was a perfect example. I'm going to go home and clean up the place before Stone gets home and has to go right back into the hospital all over again when he sees it. It's actually not that bad. An hour, tops. Friday, September 27th, 2002. Stone is pissy right now because they're stalling his release from the hospital. The doctor hasn't come to clear him, and Stone is angry because the nurses say he can't leave until his echocardiogram results come in 48 hours from now. But the cardiologist who did the echocardiogram wrote in his chart that he could leave today. Stone works in a medical office. He takes these calls every day, and he said, "These echocardiogram results never take 48 hours. The nurses are just stalling to keep me here so this hospital census doesn't go down. And I don't want to lay in this room for 2 more days while the bill skyrockets." The last time he was in the hospital, I had to perform to get Stone released and demand that the nurses call the doctor and have him come and sign him out. Stone needs a work release and prescriptions, so leaving against medical advice is out of the question. I just know that he wants to come home and get out of there. On the Hollywood side, I had a recent incident with Augustus Meep. He's the film star, TV comedian, stand-up guy who at a private party his director of publicity, Janet, asked me to cover with a bombardment of requests. I forwarded her to those reporters who actually would be the ones to cover him and told Janet, "I am not a reporter. I manage a newsroom, and there's a big difference." I would love to tell her also that her boss is a sour lemon head who has seen better days. I don't want to get roped into any of their drama. Augustus needs to learn, somehow, that just because you throw yourself a party does not guarantee you press coverage, especially when you have such an obviously fake and unpleasant persona. He's a prickly pear. That's Hollywood. I didn't make the rules. More on that debacle and the clash that happened to come. Meanwhile, there's a wife. She's part of a Hollywood power couple that's A-list but treated like B-list in some circles. The power couple wife had her assistant call me because she can't remember the parties that she was at in a gone-by year, and she wants to put together a press kit. If I had been one of many people I know who'd taken her call and not cared, they'd have said, "Power who?" I tried to approach her baffled assistant in a nice way and told him the protocol instead of making random calls on her behalf and sounding confused, which is what he was doing. I told him that he should call a photo service or our research library. Give a range of dates and ask to do a photo search based on her name and the time in question. I told him to be specific as he can, because no one knew her party schedule but her. He said he'd called around and no one answered. I said it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They're at lunch. Leave a message. He laughed, a nasal baritone chuckle in response to what I said, and I said, "It is funny, and it's reality. You need a library, not a newsroom. Call me after you have the specifics narrowed down, and I'll see what I can do." And that was the end of that call. I'm over these people, always asking for favors and then acting vague. I envision her husband to be a bit of a player hater. He's nowhere near as greasy and unctuous as his younger equivalent in New York, but he sure has been sued by a lot of his talent and artists who end up broke as hell. Fiscal responsibility is up to the artists, but he seems a bit funky like that. I do have a bit of a soft spot for the power wife, because years ago, when I was up for one of her films, she wrote me a handwritten card telling me that she'd keep me in mind for other work. And though it never happened and I was working elsewhere, it kept me floating against Hollywood indifference for months at the time. Stone just called. His doctor signed him out with a lot of meds to take in the short term. Stone says he wants to go back to work October 4th. Friday, September 22nd, 2002. I ended up being a little harsh with Nigel the other night. He knew my husband was in the hospital. And don't forget, they're friends too. I've met my obligations and Stone's. So Nigel and I went to the Sweet Home Alabama screening, and we were having a drink at a watering hole I used to take him to when I was performing at the Santa Monica Playhouse in West Hollywood. I was exhausted, and after a hearty sip of gin, that's when Nigel said, "Carl, I am 235 pounds. This had to be, the 139th time that I've heard this sentence from Nigel's mouth. I finally just said, "You need to get over it." I said this with finality. I said, "Nigel, you look great. You're handsome. You're a man. Men have a chest, arms, legs, ass, and you're a man." He said, "But I used to be a 32 waist, Carl. You don't understand." I said, "You don't understand. You will not be a 32 waist ever again. So get over it. Deal with it." I made a cut motion with my hand, adding, "If you went back to a 32 waist, Nigel, where is your head going to go? You'd look misshapen." He went on to say, "I don't mind if a potential boyfriend is overweight, since I'm overweight myself." I said, "If you're that forgiving, then why can't you be that forgiving of yourself? I'm not a 36 waist anymore. I'm a 38. Do I care? Stone needs to lose weight too. If you don't want to end up like a certain person we know that you don't like, with a superficial and set of porno standards mentality, then you need to accept that you're husky, and if it's that bothersome, then take steps to lose weight or accept it. Period. I'm tired of hearing it, Nigel." You'd have to hear him. It's as if he's been sexless for a year because of his weight gain. Please. It has happened to everybody. I told him, "Nigel, keep an open mind about the laws of attraction and see what happens. You might just be surprised. You could meet a great person if you stop trashing yourself first." Nigel actually thanked me, which surprised me. We have an event to go to. He's my +1 at a Grammy party next week. It's close to home at the Derby, and I like the music industry crowd. He might even meet somebody. Well, I survived my first week as assistant to the editor and office manager. It will be a far easier week ahead with Stone home and not having to do triple duty between work, home, and the hospital. I'm leaving early tonight to get home faster. We are going to cut the salt and the stress. All right, everyone, that's the end of that episode, and now it's time for the recap. I gotta just say, first of all, forgive me for my scratchy voice today, or if it's scratchier than usual. I really feel like it's partly the weather because it's so very hot and humid here in Florida. On the Gulf Coast, not complaining. Absolutely not. But I also think that some of it is just maybe nerves, because in putting this episode together and going back to Stone being in the hospital and, oh, wow. I mean, look, this is mild. And by the way, no trigger warning needed for this episode, which is why I didn't bring it up, because this all seemed very manageable at the time. And, you know, when I first started dating Bebbles, he was always a big guy. He weighed more than I did, but probably by 30 or 40 pounds. I'm 6 feet tall and he was 5'11", and we wore the same shoe size. I remember wearing his Timberland boots. If we were doing roughneck stuff outside, he could wear my pants, you know, because I always kind of had a size bigger, because that was kind of the style in the aughts, you know, kind of gave you a bigger, wider leg. And so we would go to Six Flags, Magic Mountain. He was walking up and down those hills. So he was very active, you know, and he was just one of those guys that was a big boy. And that's how I like him at that time. And today, you know, he was a bear, just not a hairy one. And so, you know, he had a diabetic coma in, I believe, 1999 or 2000. And that was really, really scary. And we had dealt with that and things were getting better. But as you can see here, there were issues. You know, he was having swelling because of kidney function. And the doctor felt that, you know, in time that could be reversed. And some of it was. But I won't get ahead of myself, other than to say that, you know, looking back at this, I did really like that. One, I was very calm, which is, I tried to be calm, and that's kind of my brand in a crisis, because it's mostly now, not all the time, but, you know, we can do this together, and compartmentalizing, but not in a toxic way, right? So I felt, hey, look, you just take care of your health. I'll take care of the bills. I'll take care of the house. I'm working. You know, he was working. So like disability, fine, if he wanted to take it. And I don't know how long that the disability, how long he took disability for, because as you can see, he wants to go back to work within days. So I would have to go into the journal. I'm not reading ahead of myself, because, you know, it's just a lot more organic. Of course, I remember in my memory, but the specifics, you know, I'll tell you as they happen. And with respect to Bebbles, and of course, I think he'd want people to know, in this particular instance, you know, stress, and it's something that we all deal with. And it's, you know, I need to calm down. Stress is not good. And I know that there's a need for a little stress, right? Like there's that famous experiment where like they took these organisms and one had a completely stress-free environment and it died. And the other one that had stress induced into its environment, you know, did better. But there's a limit, right? There's a fine line, and stress is not good. And so I am glad that I am on brand, and I was like, look, you know, when he gets home, these things are doable. We can cut the stress. I can help him with his dietary changes, because it's not like I couldn't have benefited from some of them too, right? Even though my work was a lot more body conscious, I am not gonna lie, I wasn't, you know, my weight concerns were always just for myself. I never really worried about it, because I just always been a big guy. I was that kid wearing tough skins at Thanksgiving in 1980. Yep, that was me. And not too happy about it either. Because, I wanted to be fly. I wanted to wear dress pants and look like the Ozzy Brothers or the OJs playing football or Heat Wave. We're riding on the groove line. Throw the ball to the dude in the tough skins. The child with the clothes in his eyes. Anyway, yeah, man, stress. So we got to keep our stress down. It's just really, really important. And again, I know these are stressful times. Look, I feel, really, even myself, like it's time to turn some of these things around, because I'm still looking for a job, you guys. I think I'm up to 900 resumes now. I'm not even kidding. And I don't feel like it's impossible. I know it's just a matter of time. But, as you all know, I moved away from Los Angeles at the end of last year, literally on New Year's Eve. Then I got here, and I don't think I discussed it on the podcast, but I hadn't been here 2 months and got T-boned in a shopping center not far from here. Oh, so I had like really bad back pain and sciatica for the first time in my life. It lasted 13 weeks. And to anyone who was dealing with back pain or sciatica, I mean, I always knew it was real, so I was never like, that's not real. Do some jumping jacks. Shit, listen, make me want to holler. That wore me out, man. And it was depressing. I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I got to be able to stand. I need to be able to sit. What? Anyway, and I'm not trying to go down a rabbit hole. All I'm just trying to say is, I know that that's just me, right? And so all of us have had all kinds of stress, monetary stress, all kinds of things happening, and it's just very, very intense. And so I'm just making a wish for all of us right now. Like, let's just let some of this stress that we can go. And I know we can't get rid of all of it. So, I'm not being ridiculous, because I've had people tell that to me during tragedy, like, this isn't real and we just won't think about it because it's not happening. And I loved the person who said that, and I wanted to throw them out of my home when they said it, because it was like easy for you to say, right? So anyway, just all of us collectively, just whatever we can set down. And maybe it's just a little pebble, as my sister and I would say. Then set that little pebble down. Or another thing my sister and I talk about is, the metaphorical bookshelf, right? Do you need another volume of stress? If it can be avoided, on that bookshelf, weighing it down or threatening to break it, and as my mom always says, let go and let God. For you, whatever you feel is helpful to you and comforting, that is bigger than yourself. But I'm sure not telling you what to do. I'm just saying I understand it's very prevalent. And so this journal entry made me remember that. But there's plenty of those that will help me remember that. And in the next episode, Stone came home, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more to talk about. And as for Nigel and getting on him about his weight gain, yeah, I just was like, dude, I can't listen to this anymore. Nigel used to be someone who'd been on TV, and he'd been on TV at a young age, meaning early 20s. And so that's when he was a 32 waist. Now here it was, say some years later, He's in his mid 30s at the time because he's a couple of years older than I am. And when he would get depressed or in his cups, he would just go back to, I've gained so many pounds, this is what I weigh. I'm not a 32 waist. You don't understand. And part of, by the way, that you don't understand was a little bit shady, right? Because it's kind of like, oh, you don't understand because you were wearing tough skins in 5th grade. You've never been a 32 waist. But see, I didn't care because I was like, I was on TV too. Except I was a 34 or 36, and I just wasn't trying to maintain that. If you've ever been to Hollywood and you go on to Hollywood Boulevard, you'll see all these like musicians or people who were in like these kind of obscure bands in the 80s and the 70s, still wearing those, tight little pants, the little leather 30 waist pants. It takes some work. And that's their thing. That's their vibe. That's their brand. But for Nigel, it was like, dude, you look fine. And that's the thing. Most people, I'm just saying, weight, it's very individual. I have, when I was a teenager, journals just about nothing but weight. And so that's a whole nother podcast episode. All I was just trying to tell him is like, dude, look. So I just felt like, let's just not go down a rabbit hole. But he would do it a lot. But as you could see, he thanked me. So I just had enough. And at that particular time, I was just like, I got so much going on right now. I can't really handle it. And a couple of years earlier, all of a sudden I couldn't handle milk. Right. But I didn't know anything about lactose intolerance, and I'd had like an upper GI, and I was, my doctor would give me, have me try something and it wouldn't work. And so I didn't know what it was. And so when you don't know what you're eating, like what's making me feel this terrible, you start just guessing. Right. So one time Nigel and I went to Astro Burger on Santa Monica Boulevard. And I got a cheeseburger, and I was like, well, maybe it's the tomatoes, right? So first of all, I didn't like pickles. I don't like pickles on a sandwich. So I took off the pickles, and then I took off the tomatoes. And Nigel, like at the top of his lungs, was like, Carl, you have an eating disorder. Like at the top of his lungs. And of course, I had to check him. I was like, dude, first of all, you don't know what you're talking about. Second, like, lower your fucking voice. Gonna have half of West Hollywood thinking I've got, an eating disorder or cocaine problem. Like, shut up. Because neither was true. I would have loved to eat. But, it was Bebbles who was like, why don't you try Lactaid? And before you knew it, it was like the heavens opened. I was like, oh, this was here all the time. Anyway, got to be comfortable in your own skin. And I know that's not easy because, as I said, I have struggled with weight so many different times and been hard on myself about it. So I'm not minimizing anyone's struggle or thoughts on the matter, but just explaining why I just kind of had it with Nigel in that moment about it, because I felt like this is more about weight. You're like wishing that you were still on TV, and it's in a different era, and it was a new era. And of course he could have gotten down to a 32 waist, I kind of did it as reverse psychology. Like, you're never going to be a 32 waist again, because at least maybe he'd stop talking about it, and so that was that. Augustus Meep, that cranky ass film, TV, stand-up star. There will be more on that. And, we actually ended up working for the same employer over the course of my career. I won't say when, because I've worked at a lot of different places. Look, I've worked at a lot of nice places, he said, chewing his gum. No, we ended up working at the same place, but never really interacting. And it's not Eddie Murphy. It's not one of the Wayans brothers, and it's not Cat Williams. So that's the only hint that I can give. Don't try to solve the mystery. It's really not worth it. He's not gotten any nicer over the years, allegedly. But yeah, he was him and his publicist were a thorn in my side at that time. And the power couple lady, the one who couldn't remember what party she went to in 2001 or whatever and wanted to put together her own press kit. I wasn't being mean to her assistant, but I was kind of like just trying to give him a teachable moment. Like, dude, don't just start calling all over the place. My boss can't remember where she was, but she told me to put together a press kit. Because again, at least he got me who could explain it to him. If he had called Variety or Nikki Fink or someone back then, you know, back in the days, Gawker, can you imagine? They'd have let him have it. He'd have been a cover story, a cautionary tale. So it sounds like I was harsh on him, but you know, I think it helped because he got it together. He pulled himself together. That'll do it for this week's episode. Thank you for being here. Don't forget, this podcast runs on donations. It's listener and audience supported. So if you'd like to support this podcast, if you'd like to support this podcast, no amount is too small. You can donate at www.letstalkabouthollywood.com/support, or you can donate on the link that's in the show notes for this episode or any other episode that you're listening to. The other 41. Okay? If you can't donate, no worries. Just come on back. Come back next week. And please feel free to share this podcast with a friend, or you can rate it on the Apple iTunes store. You can rate it on Spotify, wherever you want to rate the podcast. If you're so moved, thank you for being here. As always, it was great spending time with you. I'll see you on the next episode. Have a safe rest of your week, as I said, and I appreciate you. Thank you for all of your kind thoughts, support, and know that I'm sending the same to you and much love. Okay? Take care, and as always, don't forget, love is real, and I wish you all great things. I'll see you next time.